So we talk a lot about taking your life back from dieting, and then we end up telling people how to like log their food on MyFitnessPal. And then a lot of people find me on MyFitnessPal and they look through my diary and they're like, do you eat or what? Because I'll like half log my food sometimes. Sometimes you'll go in there and you'll see, you know, maybe 800 calories or something crazy because I started logging and didn't finish. So I am a bit of a hypocrite. MyFitnessPal is an app where you can log your food to keep track of what you're eating. So yes, a lot of people are not consistent. A lot of people are like me. They kind of are on again, off again. So it's a love-hate relationship for me. And like I said, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I do tell people to log their food. And then when they go and look through my diary, they're like, well, what do you eat? You don't even log yours. So I want to give you both sides of that equation. I do ultimately, because there's a thing in the fitness industry, maybe you've heard of intuitive eating, things like that. I do ultimately feel like everyone should be able to eat without logging their food all the time. I don't think that everyone needs to be completely and totally dependent on being next to a computer or having your phone nearby. Like if your phone dies, you shouldn't be like, well, I didn't know what to eat because I didn't, you know, I couldn't log it. So I feel like ultimately you should get to a point where you can eat intuitively, which is what most people see when they are looking at my MyFitnessPal diary. I do occasionally log it, like if there's a client or someone writes to me and they're kind of confused and they want a good idea of what I eat, then I'll log for a couple of days just so that those examples are in there. Or if I'm going out of town or switching phases to where I need to kind of dial in my eats, I will log my food. Now, do I think that logging is important and that most people should do it? Yes, to an extent, maybe not forever, but at some point, typically if you're trying to change something about your life, you have to know where you are first before you can change it. So I do feel like most people will benefit from some form of knowing what they're eating when they start out. And for some people, it may just be to know how much you're eating already so that you can know what a deficit is if you're trying to actually lose fat, because you do need a caloric deficit in order to lose fat. So let's just put that out there. But there are a lot of diet plans that will say like no need a calorie count and things like that. And that's all well and good. But one thing that you have to understand is even the plans that say that, essentially that means because they're already set up to lower your caloric intake. So they're set up in a way that you're eating less. So that's why it's like you don't have to track and you don't have to count calories because it's already being counted for you. Somebody's already making sure that you're eating less. So even the programs that say you don't have to, they're set up in a way that if you're removing certain things from your diet that maybe you hadn't already, you're naturally lowering your caloric intake. So, but you do have to know where you are in order to get to a different place. So I'm going to give you a few examples of how you can use the logging to your advantage and then also be able to wean yourself off of it, you know, if that's just not something that you want to do long term. I'm just going to give some tips on how to use it to your advantage when you are logging, and then how to wean yourself off if you're the type of person who doesn't want to do it forever. So if you're like me and you know that ultimately you are not going to be tied to your phone or your laptop or whatever, then you need these tips. So remember that yes, you may need to track food at first, not forever. So if you're the type of person that's like, I start and then I stop, then go into it with that mentality so that you can just nail it from the beginning. Okay, so you want to use it first to understand what foods that you're eating and how they're affecting you. If you're the type of person that knows that you are not going to track forever, you need to pay closer attention than the person who's just kind of like blindly logging, is what I call it, because you aren't paying attention to your food. You're just entering it in, and whatever that app tells me to eat, that's what I'm eating. I call that blindly logging because you're not really paying attention to it. If you know that you don't want to log forever, then you have to pay attention to what you're inputting. Pay attention to, okay, what foods did it take for me to hit my protein goal? What does a general day of eating look like in order for me to hit my calorie goal? And like I said, a lot of the reasons why we recommend that people do track their food in the beginning is because a lot of people aren't eating enough foods for fat loss. And because they've been in a diet mentality for so long, their metabolism has slowed to the point of whatever that lower calorie level is. So in order for them to understand how much they should be eating, we give them a general guideline of what they should be eating, and then we say, okay, go in and log it to see where you are. Are you anywhere near that? And if you're not, what does it take to get to that point? So first, logging and paying attention. How much food should I really eat? What does it look like in general to have that much food? And when you're trying to hit certain protein goals, you're logging your food because you need to see. You may feel like I'm eating protein all day, I'm hitting my goals, but until you see it in the app or on the computer or on paper, if you're journaling it, whatever, until you actually see it, you don't know if you are. So you need to see what that looks like. What does a day of hitting my protein, or water or fiber or whatever it is that you're missing, what does that look like, and what foods would you need to eat in order for that to happen? Okay, so you're looking at it to see what foods does it take to hit that goal? What type of foods can kind of be your mainstays that you can keep in your routine in the long term? Learn what foods help you to hit the amount of calories and macros that you need. So if you know you're not going to log for long periods of time, you need to be paying attention to this from day one. And you need to take the time to maybe go into empty diaries and play around with food amounts and see like, okay, so if I do this, I can balance that out with this. I can do this and this. Whenever I eat this thing, I'm usually over in this. So what other things may I have to remove or do less of on the days that I have this? So just actually looking, you're going to have to learn how to analyze your day a little bit better if you know that you're not ultimately a forever logger. Another thing is to take note of how foods make you feel. So if you have an app like MyFitnessPal, it has food notes. So at the end of the day, maybe taking food notes. If there's a day that you feel maybe bloated the next day, then you can go back and look and see, okay, what did I eat that may have caused this? Or if you're noticing that you have migraines often, possibly going back and looking at is there something that's a trigger food for me? So having something somewhere where you're journaling out the foods that you eat just allows you to be more aware of those things, so that way when you wean yourself from logging, you still know what your trigger foods are for things that may cause certain, if your bones are achy or you're having a headache or your stomach is cramping or something like that. You get to see that because you have this visual somewhere of what those foods were and you have the notes that match them. So understanding, so we talked about you want to log to an extent, not necessarily be obsessed with it. And if you know you're going to wean off of it, then pay attention. What kind of foods does it take to help you to hit your calories, that are sufficient food for your body? What does the proper amount of protein for your goals look like food-wise? Because remember, we eat food, not calories, not points, not macros. We eat food. So what does the food look like? Another reason of if you are using the logging, something else that you want to take note of is where you can improve. What foods can you add in? So if you are constantly slipping up or falling off the wagon or whatever you're calling it, maybe going back and looking, okay, on this day when I don't eat enough or when I don't have enough by lunchtime or when I eat these foods, it triggers these reactions for me. So the days that because a lot of people may skip breakfast and feel fine, whereas someone else, they may skip breakfast and then they find this correlation to the fact that, okay, this skipped breakfast means that I totally pigged out by, at 4 o'clock before I was getting off work, I'm at the vending machine. So noticing what your habits are and what it's triggering for you can really help you to analyze these foods and create habits that you take away even when you stop logging. So that's the point of why you have to pay attention to that. So I don't do it all the time. If I'm trying to nail in something, then I will log it in because maybe I'm trying to figure out, okay, what exactly does this look like? And then I know that, okay, I can just kind of keep doing that and I'm fine. And if I veer from that, then maybe I'll log again to see, okay, how does this new thing fit into the equation? And once I figure that out again, because I'm analyzing it, I'm not just blindly logging. I'm not just throwing a bunch of stuff in and seeing did the numbers work out, because that doesn't help me in life. It helps me to really see if I'm looking and analyzing constantly, why did this happen? Why was I craving something this day? Why was my energy low on this day? Why am I eating a certain way and maybe gaining? Or why am I bloated? Why did I get that migraine? All of those things, when you can go back and look and analyze instead of assuming or just jumping on the next fad to try to fix it, you have that there and you write the notes and you make the correlation so that if it happens again, you can say, what was that thing that caused this last time? And you can go back in your notes and you look. Okay, so the point is just to create, yes, to increase awareness. Use your logging to create awareness of what you're doing, maybe the bites and nibbles that you're having throughout the day, or maybe the fact that you're not eating for longer periods of time than you thought. Because maybe you feel like, oh yeah, I'm eating enough, I eat plenty, because you're only thinking of what you have maybe at the beginning of the day, or you're only thinking of what you had at the end of the day, and it seems like enough to you. So this is just to create awareness for the little bites and nibbles that you're having and when maybe you're not eating enough.